When a crime is committed, the perpetrator inevitably leaves behind something, a description, DNA, or physical evidence. This is the criminal's print on the scene. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, Episode 10.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, Episode 10. This is Zach.
And this is your co-host, Jaron.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And I want to give a personal thank you to the new listeners we had last week. Today, we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Karlie Gusè. And Karlie was born on May 13th, 2002. Her parents got divorced when she was only 2 years old. And after the divorce, originally she lived with her mother for some time. But when she was 9 or 10 years old, she moved in with her father and her stepmom, who they already had 2 sons.
So her father was named Karlie Gusè.
Shout out to the cool name, Zach.
He's 43 years old and he works in construction. The stepmother is named Melissa Gusè. She was an escrow assistant at a title company, and this title company is also somewhere that Karlie would work part-time after school on weekends, that type of thing. They lived in Bishop, California, which is really northern California, and it's very close to the border of Nevada. When she disappeared, however, they were no longer living in Bishop. They moved about 2 months before the disappearance to another city named Calfant, California. It is about 20 miles north of Bishop. Bishop, I mentioned, is a very small town. Its population's less than 4,000, and Calfant, the town they moved into, has a population of less than 1,000. So they're both small towns, and she stayed in the Bishop Union High School, home of the Broncos. So though it was a move, it wasn't like she was being totally uprooted. It was just a 20-mile down the road move. She had a boyfriend at the school. His name was Donald Arrowwood III. And this year of school, her junior year, hadn't been going very well for her. She had been struggling in school. As of lately, she had been going to class high. Her grades were plummeting. And just things generally weren't going well at all. So her parents recently had to get with her and tell her, you got to get your act together. And she was doing that, and things were improving.
So Karlie was 5'7", 110 pounds, and at the time of her disappearance, she was 16 years old. Having said that, now she would be 17. She had dark blonde hair. On a side note, her hair when she disappeared was lighter than it looks like in her pictures, and she had blue eyes. So before we get into the disappearance, Jaron, let's talk about the day before.
So the day before she disappeared was October 12th, 2018, and this was a Friday. She told her mother she was going to go to a high school football game, which obviously was approved, and that was fine. Bishop Union was playing Rossmond, and the Broncos won the game 59-24.
Holy cow, that's a butt whooping.
Not much of a game, was it?
No.
Unfortunately, Karlie wasn't at that game. Instead, she went to a house party. And I'm sure that nobody has ever done that before, right?
Absolutely.
So at the house party, she was smoking marijuana, smoking some weed, and she began acting very strange. Her boyfriend's account was that she got scared of the music, that's a quote, and she got scared of me. She complained that she didn't feel well and that she wanted to go home. So at 8 o'clock, she called her dad and her stepmom from the party and asked them to come pick her up, which was a very rational decision and a good decision to make.
So when they arrived to pick her up, she was actually, I kid you not, literally running down the street.
Which is not a rational decision to make.
Certainly not rational, agreed. She was very pale and kind of looked like a ghost. Her pupils were extremely dilated. They got her back home somewhere around 9 p.m. So they ate dinner and attempted to get Karlie to sleep.
So Zach, her father, he said that she was scared of something and he didn't know what. He tried to speak to her and she wouldn't really talk to him. And he can't explain it but to say that she was scared. Her strange behavior continued. Here's some of the weird things that she said to her mother.
I really messed up today. She also said, no, I don't want to go to sleep. You're going to kill me.
The stepmom replied that that's crazy. Why would I kill you?
And I second that. Why in the world would she say this to her stepmom?
It's really strange. And, during this whole weird interaction with her, the stepmom actually recorded it on audio on her cell phone because she thought, I'm going to show Karlie exactly how she acts when she's high so that she can see how crazy she's being.
That was very, very smart of the mom to do.
It was.
She also said, I'm just thinking of all this demonic stuff.
And when they offered her a power bar and a salad to try to get her to sleep, she said, that's the devil's lettuce.
So instead of sleeping, she wanted to paint her toenails and read the Bible. That's an interesting combination right there.
So yeah, it's interesting. Here she's talking about the devil's lettuce, and she's scared that somebody's going to hurt her, and she's thinking about demonic stuff and wanting to read the Bible. She clearly was unstable and really afraid of something.
This was not her first time smoking weed either, let it be known. So this is something that she has done before. So Jaron, my question to you would be, could it have been laced with something?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely worth thinking about, and that's something that her parents actually have kind of wondered about, but there's no way to prove it one way or the other right now. Could she have also been on something more potent, specifically maybe LSD?
I certainly think so, because I don't think marijuana would do that to her and have that effect on her. She asked her biological mother about LSD in the past. We do know this.
Yeah, so it just lends a little credence to the idea that possibly she was experimenting, and that's why it was so much more than just what you'd get out of marijuana. So that kind of takes us into October 13th, 2018, and that is the morning that Karlie disappeared. She disappeared from her home in South Chalfant, California. One of the kind of interesting things of the story that really doesn't seem to be of big significance but has been played up is that her stepmother's account did vary to some degree. Her story changed a little bit as it's gone on, but the main points of the story have remained the same. So the current story goes that Karlie eventually fell asleep with her stepmother, Melissa, next to her. When Melissa woke up at 5:45 a.m., Karlie was in bed next to her. The difference between the original story and now story is the original was Melissa woke up at 5:45, went into Karlie's room, checked on her, and then went back to sleep. But either way, when she woke back up at 7:30, she was alone and unable to find Karlie.
So that is certainly a red flag that the story changes, but something that minor, I'm not sure that would be too huge in my mind as long as the base stays the same.
Yeah, and she spoke to the fact that it was just such a stressful time in her life, and she even said, I should have never even gave that interview. I wasn't in the mental state to be giving testament to what happened that day, and I just said it wrong.
And she was obviously stressed and probably had not been sleeping at that point, to her defense.
I think that is very likely.
At first, they weren't extremely worried because they assumed maybe Karlie had just got up and went for a walk. That she wanted to clear her head for maybe the day before. But soon, when they got up, they realized, hey, the front door is left open. It was left ajar. So they began searching, but they couldn't find her. And at 9:35, Zach, the father, calls her biological mother, Lindsay Fairley, to tell her that they can't find Karlie.
And I think it is important to note that Karlie was very close to her biological mother, Lindsay. She didn't live with her anymore, but they were really good friends and kept in very consistent communication. So after they called Lindsay, they then called the sheriff's office to file a missing persons report because it had now been just over 2 hours since they've seen her. And it took a couple hours for the police to arrive, but when they got there, they started looking around and they found no signs at all of foul play. Again, it didn't appear anybody broke into the house. Obviously, there's no windows broken, there's no doors kicked in, nothing is misplaced. And in fact, her personal belongings, like her cell phone and just clothes and all that, everything was accounted for in her bedroom. So a lot of people have kind of wondered, why was there no Amber Alert? Why didn't this go out? And the reason is because Amber Alerts are designed for abduction cases. And this did not appear to be an abduction case because there was simply no sign of a crime. Everything was pristine in the house.
And so I'm just, I'll second this, but to the defense of the police, yeah, they came, they looked, everything that would be a red flag to them was not a red flag. I mean, there was nothing suspicious there. So I completely understand why in that situation they did not come out with an Amber Alert.
I agree, and probably the only thing that was even that weird is that she had been gone longer than you would expect and that she left her cell phone. You just wouldn't expect most 16-year-olds to leave their cell phone.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So then the search is on, and that afternoon a huge search officially began. It is worth noting that the Mono County is a mountainous desert region. It gets cold, especially in October when this disappearance happened. And so multiple helicopters equipped with heat detection were deployed to try to find a body or a person, and 6 scent dogs were brought in for the search also.
And because it's a mountainous region, they also had a bunch of ATVs or off-road vehicles. They had 60 official personnel that were involved in the search from multiple departments, just to name some of them. The Inyo Sheriff Search and Rescue, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, California Highway Patrol, Caltrans, California National Guard, and the El Dorado Sheriff's Office. We do know, yeah, that's a big group. They really were bringing in as much as they could for resources to try to find her.
I'm very impressed.
They knew that it was October. Temperature was a big factor, and they needed to find her now if they planned on finding her alive.
Exactly.
So on October 15th, it was announced that there were, in fact, 3 confirmed sightings of Karlie on the day of her disappearance.
So all of them were Karlie walking towards Highway 6. And keep in mind, Jaron, this is near her home. So it's a fairly empty area, but some homes are around. So that's how you have some of these witness descriptions. Astonishingly, it has been nearly a year, and since these original sightings, we have no new leads and no new information that we know of to help find out what happened to Karlie.
Yeah, and on top of that, they went to October 25th, and they officially called off the search and rescue operation because it had been 12 days, and they weren't going to find a living person in that environment at that time.
So that's 12 days is a substantial search, especially with that many people and everybody that was brought in.
It's a huge search, and I know they covered a lot of area, but again, it's just kind of tough terrain. It's tough searching. It is strange that they were able to get on it within 4 hours, and as far as they know, she was only walking. So how far could she have possibly gone if she remained on foot?
Yeah, that's extremely difficult.
So where it stands right now, we'll talk about kind of what's new in the case, what's happened since the disappearance. Unfortunately, most of what's happened is drama, and most of the drama is around Karlie's biological mother, Lindsay Fairley. So, like I said, Lindsay was really close to her daughter, Karlie, and early on in the investigation, she was on board with it, so things on this front were peaceful. Unfortunately, the relationship between her and the stepmom and the father and the investigators and the direction of the investigation, it's all broke down. In fact, recently, she filed a formal complaint against Sheriff Ingrid Braun of the Mono County Sheriff's Office.
And that is never a good idea, to file a complaint against the sheriff's office that is trying to help you locate your daughter.
And even if you don't think they're doing a good job, they're really the only people with resources looking at this point.
Yeah, that's a really tough, mind-boggling situation. So she actually, in a letter to the California Sheriff's Association and the National Sheriff's Association, she told them, keep in mind, also posted this on social media sites, that the sheriff, quote, ignored tips, that the sheriff also cherry-picked information.
In this case, meaning she only followed tips that Melissa funneled to her and didn't want to hear the rest.
And that this sheriff was, quote, unethical, as well as negligent and corrupt in her handling of the case. Oh my, Jaron.
Very strong words.
So she also claims that the sheriff is, as if these other ones weren't bad enough, argumentative, unsympathetic, and unprofessional.
If there's one way to make somebody be argumentative, unsympathetic, and unprofessional to you, it's this letter.
That is a very good way to do that.
And to be clear, I'm not saying that the letter isn't warranted. I'm not giving my opinion. It's just that it will make the relationship fray.
And it seems like there'd be better ways of handling that situation.
It does indeed. She also accuses the sheriff of only courting the stepmom and father. She has a private investigator. She's angry that the police won't meet up with her private investigator. In fact, there's a little story that she claims her private investigator called the deputy that's in charge of the investigation and said, hey, I want to meet up. Can we schedule a time? And that he said, no, I'm busy. I can't meet with you. Meanwhile, he was across the street watching the deputy sit in his car. So there's a little more drama even. It gets layers deep, the drama here.
It sounds like it. That is awful.
She even accused the FBI special agent of not being active in the case. One of the complaints, Zach, is that she's angry lie detector testing was administered what she calls late, which was a few weeks after the disappearance. What do you think about that?
So, at least in my opinion, this makes zero sense. Because a lie detector test, it doesn't matter if you take it a week later or 30 years later. You're either going to pass it or you're going to fail it. I mean, that is in your head. You're not going to...
Yeah, I don't know of any evidence that time will change a result of a lie detector test.
I don't either. That's a horrible claim that she's making, in my opinion.
She finished the letter by pointing out something that's actually kind of interesting. This sheriff, Ingrid Braun, had once been suspended by the LAPD. The reason for her suspension was actually for giving a false account of things that were happening at the Rodney King riots. And she had once been fired from a position at the Mono County Sheriff's Department as deputy sheriff. So her sheriff had fired her. She then ran for sheriff of the exact same office and won it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that is strange.
Huh. So the sheriff, of course, once she gets this letter, gives a response and says that the letter is, quote, factually incorrect and filled with errors, and that, quote, she runs the department and not investigations. So I understand what she's saying here. Hey, I'm in charge of the whole department, not necessarily this specific investigation. But she certainly does have a big part of what investigations are looked into.
She also points out that she isn't courting the stepmom and the father, in her opinion, because she's only met with them even twice.
So then, Jaron, to add to this drama, which, bless her heart, it looks like the mother is not backing away from, she goes to Dr. Phil. Oh my goodness.
It's just, you can't see it being on Dr. Phil helping advance the search for Karlie. And when she gets on there, she says things like, Zach, Karlie went missing from your residence, and you guys are literally labeled suspects.
Yeah, that's going to do is cause more drama, more hurt feelings. Zero good that did, in my opinion. So she's also angry that they didn't call 911 when Karlie was freaking out. If this wasn't the first time they'd had problems with her, which it doesn't sound like it was, it probably wasn't needed to call 911 because they've taken care of it before on their own.
And frankly, as far as they knew, it was a 16-year-old that had been smoking weed. I mean, what are the cops going to do?
And if it was laced with something because of the way she was acting, they probably figured, hey, we don't want to get the cops involved if we don't have to.
And hindsight's 2020.
Exactly.
So things like this are easy to say now, but at the time, it's not necessarily the course of action most people would take.
So, Jaron, what's your impression on the mother at this point?
Well, she seems angry. She's obviously hurt, and maybe acting a little irrational.
And I completely understand that the anger she would have. I'm not saying anything negative towards her, but I agree with what you're saying. She certainly does seem to be acting very irrational at this point.
We will say that on the Dr. Phil show, we mentioned earlier that Melissa, her first account wasn't accurate. There was a discrepancy about if she slept with Karlie in the same bed as Karlie or if she had come into the room to check on her. And she did admit on the Dr. Phil show that that first account was false, it was fake, and that she regrets ever giving it.
But then keep in mind, multiple witnesses did see her walking when she left the house.
Yeah, so it seems indisputable that Karlie either went for a walk or she left under her own power.
Agreed. So let's give a review here, Jaron. In my opinion, none of this drama is going to help bring Karlie home. Everybody wants closure. The mother, the father, the stepmom, everybody has the same goal here, to bring Karlie back or
recover her body so there can be closure and some peace.
As hard as that is to say, exactly. So we know that she was on drugs the night before she disappeared and she was acting very strange, and we don't know exactly if it was just marijuana or if there was something added to that.
We also know that she left the house without any signs of a struggle, and she left the door ajar.
And she left all her personal items, for example, as you said, her cell phone, still at the house.
Yeah, and that would almost imply that her intent when she went outside was just to sit on the porch or to walk around the house. So she was also witnessed by 3 people walking away from the home.
And we do know, too, that they did a very thorough, extensive search looking for Karlie and or any evidence with Karlie, and they have not found anything.
So we'll go over kind of some of the possibilities and some of the theories here. Her biological mother believes that she died of an overdose.
I'm not buying that because you've got her leaving the house. You've got witnesses see her leaving the house.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Without those witnesses, you would think, well, is it possible she overdosed? The parents freaked out and kind of took some action to hide that. But with those witnesses, this is kind of a tough pill to swallow.
I agree completely. Her father believes that she ran away, which
that's possible.
It certainly is. And her stepmother says that she believes she was abducted.
Which also seems very possible. Zach, could it be that she maybe ran away or maybe was just going for a walk and was picked up and they took her?
It certainly can be. Kind of one of those things. She left. She didn't have the stuff, everything she needed. She wasn't thinking completely clearly, and she put herself in the wrong situation at the wrong time. I think it's very likely that somebody abducted her.
The police have also said that they believe she was disoriented when she left. I believe that they've just kind of gathered that from, they think it's still possible that she had some influence of drugs in her system, as well as, she left the door open and things like that you wouldn't normally do if you were thinking with total clarity.
So could she have run away?
Well, yes, but a lot of the indicators a lot of the things you look for when a kid runs away just weren't there.
I agree. She didn't have any of her items on her, no clothes, no money, nothing that she would have needed in order to run away. No bags, none of that stuff.
And that we can tell, no real family issues. She wasn't even fighting with her boyfriend from high school that we can tell. So is it possible that she left, was disoriented, and just got lost?
It certainly is possible. And as Jaron mentioned before, it was cold. And it's very possible that she succumbed to hypothermia. And because it's such a hard area to search, they haven't found her remains up to this point. So let's go over her physical description one more time. So if you know anything about her whereabouts or anything that could have happened to her, please pay attention to these physical attributes. She was 5'7", 110 pounds, and today she would be 17 years old.
She had dark blonde hair. If you see the pictures, though, keep in mind that her hair when she disappeared was lighter than it is in the pictures. And she had blue eyes.
So tips. Jaron, if they have tips, because everybody is in agreement, they want to see Karlie brought home, or as you said, some sort of closure in this case. Who do they contact with tips?
You can email tips@officialbringkarliehome.com. You can call the National Center for Missing and Endangered Children. Their number is 1-800-843-5678. That's 1-800-THE-LOST. Or you can contact the Mono County Sheriff's Office with any tips or information at 760-932-7549.
And keep in mind that there is a $10,000 reward for information leading to Karlie's safe return. So that is episode 10, The Disappearance of Karlie Gusè. Thank you very much for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check out our Facebook and our Twitter @PodcastCriminal. If you'd be so kind, please leave a review on any app you're listening to. And everybody, have a fantastic day.
And remember, keep your record clean and your prints off the scene.